Germany's government just collapsed. Yes, collapsed. What does this mean and what happens next? Let me explain. Germany's Chancellor Olaf Scholz, leader of the coalition government, lost a key vote of confidence in the parliament. Why? Because his three-party alliance made up of Social Democrats, Greens, and Free Democrats fell apart over the economic policies. The final straw? Scholz fired his finance minister, Christian Lindner, the head of the Free Democrats, after 6 weeks of intense budget disagreements. Once the coalition fell, the Bundestag, sorry for the pronunciation, voted against keeping Scholz in power. Out of 707 votes, only 207 supported him. Ouch. What happens when a government collapses? For Germany, it's a really big deal. Right now, the government is in caretaker mode. Scholz and his team stay on temporarily, but with a limited power. They're focused on pushing through some urgent laws like tax cuts and increased child benefit policies that might actually pass if the opposition agrees. Meanwhile, early elections are set for February 23rd, 2025, and all eyes are on the Christian Democrats, who are leading in the polls, but here's the twist. The far-right alternative for Germany is gaining ground too, which could make things even more chaotic. So Germany is in political limbo right now. With huge decisions coming up, this will impact not just Germany, but also the European Union. February's election could completely shift the power dynamics in Europe. What do you think? Could this be a wake-up call for other governments? Kind of feel like the same thing literally just happened here in Canada this morning.
Breaking news. Germany's government just collapsed and it looks like Germany might be electing a new parliament in March. Here's what you need to know if you live in Germany or you're thinking about moving to Germany. What happened? The traffic light coalition broke up. Chancellor Olaf Scholz fired Finance Minister Christian Lindner. Why did they break up? Well, like in many breakups, they blame each other. Scholz says Lindner broke his trust too many times. And Lindner says he got fired because he refused to go into more debt with the government budget in order to finance things like dealing with the consequences of the war in Ukraine. So Lindner's party, FDP, now left the coalition, which means, the government doesn't have the majority anymore. So what's going to happen now? Olaf Scholz said he will ask the parliament for a vote of confidence to check if he still has the majority. January 15, he's going to ask the question. If he doesn't get a yes, which is what it's looking like right now, he is pretty much voted out of office by the Bundestag, which then makes new elections possible. So when will we have elections? Instead of sticking to the schedule and having elections in September, this now means we could have election as early as end of March. Of course, I'll update you and I will make another video on this topic explaining what this all means in connection to the rise of the far-right AfD.
Well, we just got an update on Canada's fiscal position. Just now, Karina Gold, the government House leader, tabled the fall economic statement. No presentation, no speeches, nothing. And Canada's deficit has ballooned to $61.9 billion. And it's important to note that this is $21.9 billion more than the fiscal guardrail that Chrystia Freeland had promised. So while dropping that fiscal bombshell on everybody and then running away, currently Dominic LeBlanc is being sworn in at Rideau Hall as the new finance minister. And while Jagmeet Singh is doing press conferences calling on Prime Minister Justin Trudeau to resign, he realistically should be voting non-confidence in this government, because if there has ever been a time where it is more appropriate to pull confidence, now's the time. But honestly, I don't even think anyone knows what's going to happen next. So follow me, I'll keep you updated.
So today feels like a total nightmare for anybody who's worried about the future of Canada and about democracy itself, because in just one single day, two of the most important people in Justin Trudeau's government, Chrystia Freeland, the Deputy Prime Minister, and Sean Fraser, the Housing Minister, have resigned. And to make things worse, members of the Parliament from all sides, including the Liberals, are now openly calling for Trudeau to step down. Of course, Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre wasted no time using this chaos to demand for a snap election. And for anyone who's paying attention, this is terrifying. Freeland stepping down right now feels like the floor has fallen out from under the Liberal government. We all know that the reason she resigned is because Trudeau wanted to move her in a different position, so she wanted to save her reputation and career by resigning herself. And she publicly said that she's stepping back because Canada needs strong leadership, and this was the right moment for her to leave. But let's be real, her leaving right now and all of this happening right now when the government is already hanging on by a thread feels like a sign that something much bigger is breaking behind the scenes. If you've been worried about Canada following the path of other countries where democratically elected governments are collapsing right now, this is the kind of moment that should be setting off alarm bells. We also need to talk about Sean because as the housing minister, he's been at the center of one of Canada's biggest problems, which is the housing crisis. And it's impossible to ignore how housing has gotten more expensive, less available, and increasingly out of reach for Canadians. But his resignation is just giving Conservatives more fuel to say that Trudeau's leadership can't hold things together anymore. So it's one thing for opposition parties to criticize a government, but it's something else entirely when MPs from across the political spectrum are coming together to demand Trudeau's resignation. This is what happened today. Liberal MPs joining forces with Conservatives and the NDP to publicly pressure Trudeau into stepping down is kind of unheard of, and it signals how divided and frustrated our country is right now. Now here's where it gets scary because this chaos gives Pierre and the Conservatives an opportunity to swoop in and grab power. Poilievre is already calling for an election, painting this as proof that Trudeau's government has collapsed, and he wants Canadians to believe that the only solution is for him to take over. Now the problem here is that the Conservative Party under Pierre has embraced dangerous rhetoric, conspiracy theories, and extremist ideas that are spreading across right-wing movements worldwide. And if they win power in this moment of chaos, it's not hard to imagine Canada sliding further towards the same kind of far-right policies that we're seeing in places like the US and Europe. Mark my words, what's happening today is about so much more than just party politics. We're literally living through a time right now when democracies all over the world are crumbling. Authoritarian leaders are gaining ground, spreading disinformation, and using fear to divide people. Canada has always felt like a safe place, but that safety is not guaranteed anymore. If we're not careful, we could lose the things that make this country a beacon of hope: fairness, inclusion, and democracy itself. The resignations today, the infighting, and the calls for Trudeau to step down are all signs that Canada is at a giant crossroads. And how we move forward from this moment will determine whether we stay on a path of progress or slide backwards into something much, much darker. Now, Trudeau hasn't responded to any of this yet, but it's clear that his leadership is on the edge. And we don't know if he's going to step down, we don't know if the Liberals are going to find another way to rebuild, and we don't know if Poilievre is going to get an election and demand to take Canada into a terrifying new direction. We just don't know right now. But even amid all of this uncertainty, there is still one thing that's for certain. Today wasn't just another day in politics. Today should serve as a major wake-up call for anyone who cares about democracy and the future of this country. Now is the time to pay attention and get involved and fight for the Canada that we believe in.
So let me just give it to you straight. It says America's headed for the fact of the bankruptcy. Okay, so this is a retweet from Wall Street Maverick. And so it says here, let me just click on this one so you can see what I see. It says U.S. government brings in about $5 trillion per year in revenue from taxes, fees, and tariffs. 5. The U.S. government is on pace to spend about $1.4 trillion just for interest payments. Interest. We don't even talk about principal. No point. There's not enough currency in existence to pay that back. We're just focusing on interest. On the $36 trillion in debt during Trump's first year. So not only was Trump a part of this fiasco that the world experienced in his previous term, but he's going to pick up during his second tenure, and it's even worse. So this plays into the fact where he needs some distractions. He needs some diversion tactics. Whoever Trump economic team is, their best, I bet you they all have a solution or a strategy to divert your attention off of what's true, try to test it in the form of gold, because they don't want the American people to really be protected. They just want to be the solution and the strategy as to how they are going to reset things by rebranding the currency and bringing in their predetermined solutions. We're already in the digital world, but it's about to get even ugly after this next event. I keep saying the same thing because people Everybody should see it.
So let me get this straight. Republicans voted for Trump because they wanted to lower prices, yet Trump has admitted twice already that prices might go up once he's president. That sure sounds a lot different than the Trump I heard on the campaign trail, who said at every single rally that prices were going down on day one or even before day one. Well, it's before day one, and just like we tried to warn you all, not only is Trump signaling that he's not able to lower prices, but the writing is on the wall for prices to actually skyrocket, thanks in no small part to his irresponsible trade tensions he's creating with both Mexico and Canada. So not only is he not bringing prices down, he's actually setting the table to make things like produce, cars, and gasoline more expensive. If you don't understand what I'm talking about, we import oil from Canada used to make gas, and a lot of our cars and produce are made in Mexico. Republicans were tricked into thinking that Trump was going to help the economy. Instead, he hijacked the working class vote and is only going to make life more expensive for American families. Everyone, thank a Republican in your life for allowing this to happen.
The collapse, this is not just a failed state. It's a failed world economy by design. This is not by accident anything that we're seeing. People can't make ends meet anymore. They're living off credit cards. The wealth is being shoved right up to the one. You know who benefited really mostly from the stock market rising as it's been this year? 54 record highs so far for the S&P 500. We collectively own maybe 2% of this market. The rest of this market is owned by the 1 and 2%, and they're laughing. They're laughing. Who do you think owns most of the crypto space? The whales.
The Syrian government has collapsed, the Assad regime has fallen, and for the first time in over 50 years, the Assad dynasty is over.
To tell the people, in 2025, there are some banks that will be folding up. Some banks that will be folding up in 2025. Some banks. Access is one of them. Some banks. GT is one of them. They'll be having issues, financial issues. Now I boast in God. No pastor will tell you what I just told you.
Where are you, Papa?
My mouth is the mouth of Elohim. My hands is the hand of Elohim. My legs are his legs. I am not myself, I am him. May God give you understanding. This is not braggadocious. I'm telling you. That's what the Mama Best scripture is saying. Him I have my being, him I live, him I walk. What do you think Apostle Paul was talking? That his totality is Yahweh.
Please follow, like, and share your opinion in the comments below.
Huge breaking news right now. The French government has collapsed. For the first time since 1962, a vote of no confidence has prevailed and the French government has collapsed. The current prime minister, just a few months after being essentially nominated by Emmanuel Macron, the president of France, will be ousted from his role. This will threaten the stability of Eurozone and of the French government for a long time. And the calls for Macron to potentially resign before his term is up in 2027 will now only grow. The far left and the far right in France joined together and prevailed on this no confidence vote in a surprise for a lot of observers. Now, Macron's term is not up until 2027, but the calls for his resignation after this vote will only go up. And this comes just months after a snap election ensured that he would remain in power for several more years. Yes, I'm in an airplane bathroom, but the news waits for no one. So as always, follow along for all the news you need to know about.
This is why we're going to go after the administrative state, not just the 2 million basic billets in the civilian side of the government, also the contractors, 8 million contractors. We're going after all of it, and we're going to take it apart. And we don't care what the mainstream media thinks about that.
Shut down the FBI. Shut down the ATF. Shut down the CDC. Shut down the U.S. Department of Education. Fire 75% of the federal bureaucrats in Washington, D.C. and send them home packing because they never should have had that job in the first place.
Imagine a world where the stock market crashes, banks fail, and global trade grinds to a halt. This scenario could unfold due to mounting debt, over-reliance on technology, and geopolitical tensions. Shocking statistics reveal that global debt has soared to over $300 trillion, making the economy a precarious house of cards. Just one major event, like a severe cyber attack on financial institutions or a sudden spike in interest rates, could trigger an unprecedented collapse. In this chaos, millions would lose their jobs, leading to widespread poverty and civil unrest. Governments might attempt to intervene with bailouts or stimulus packages, but these solutions could backfire, further inflating debt and eroding public trust. The signs are already there: rising inflation, supply chain disruptions, and record-high unemployment rates. As humanity scrambles for solutions, the system could still fail, leading to a domino effect that brings society to its knees. With resources depleting and panic spreading, would we be able to rebuild, or would this be the end of civilization as we know it? Only time will tell, but the stakes couldn't be higher.
China has just canceled $690 billion in U.S. exports. Last time Trump was in office trying to run plans like he's proposing, this cost U.S. farmers roughly $4 billion. So Republicans, you do understand the U.S. exports goods as well, right? Like, we don't just import goods from other countries, we export goods to other countries, and farmers and others make money off doing that. Now, please explain to me, like I'm 5 years old, why, if we're slapping taxes and tariffs on imports from other countries, why those countries wouldn't slap tariffs on our exports or even buy our exports at all. Well, China's now going to be getting their soybeans from Brazil, and we can expect to see this across the board. Electing a man who managed to bankrupt multiple casinos is going to play out just like those casinos did, but for our nation. Expect a decimated economy and inflation like you've never seen before. And no blaming Democrats, Republicans own every branch of government. Told you so.
Let me introduce to you Mark Carney. He is the former governor of the Bank of Canada and the Bank of England. What they're not telling you, here it is. And before Mark Carney joined the ranks of the Liberals, because they called him in to figure out a way out, you want to know what this guy's worth? $96 billion. You think he's going to be looking after you and I? Well, that's questionable, but hold on, there's more. Interestingly enough, Mark Carney is also an author, and he authored a book and how it illustrates how divided we've become. But check out this little tidbit right here. Mark Carney published his prescription for a path forward as Canada faces an increasingly divided and dangerous world. How do you think we got divided, and how do you think it got so dangerous? Could it be because of the guy that you work for, his name being Justin? Hold on. So now Mark Carney is joining a task force to come up with ideas on how we can get Canada moving. But that being said, Chrystia Freeland still hasn't done her homework and released the fall budget. And he was brought in to help her, and yet he didn't do his homework either. So how did he become worth $96 billion, you ask? There you have it.
The Simpsons and the Great Economic Crisis. In a meeting at the Statue of Liberty, political leaders come together to create a crisis. A major economic crisis that directly impacts education. In the episode Bart Gets a Zed from season 21, Springfield Elementary faces severe budget cuts due to a local economic crisis. The lack of resources forces the school to make extreme decisions, leaving teachers to deal with overcrowded classrooms, inadequate materials, and the constant threat of layoffs. Public education systems are on the brink of collapse because of economic recessions and poor financial management. But could The Simpsons have been warning us about something even bigger? Today, we're witnessing out-of-control inflation, stagnant wages, and governments unable to prioritize education. Just like in Springfield, these decisions primarily impact children and the future of upcoming generations. Could the crisis that hit Springfield be a reflection of what lies ahead for us? While the episode used humor to address a serious issue, it also left an important warning. When the economy collapses, essential services like education and healthcare are the first to suffer. It makes you wonder, are we truly prepared to face another major economic crisis?
The House has failed to pass a measure to fund the government and avert a shutdown. The resolution was backed by President-elect Trump after he derailed a previous version that had been negotiated between Republicans and Democrats.
The nays are 235, one voting present. 2/3 not being in the affirmative, the rules are not suspended and the bill is not passed.
Congress still faces a deadline of Friday at midnight to pass a measure known as a continuing resolution or face a government shutdown. If no bill is passed, it would mean potentially millions of federal employees could be furloughed. Federal contractors won't get paid, and certain agencies like the TSA would have to have their employees work without a paycheck, all during the holiday season. The new bill included some of the same provisions from the previous one, including extending the Farm Bill and providing disaster relief aid. It also included Trump's biggest demand, action on the debt ceiling, which was a non-starter for many lawmakers.
Lindsay, undoubtedly for the next couple of days, the postmortem of this bill would be whether or not Elon Musk was the deciding factor in why the original deal that both Democrats and Republicans struck just ultimately didn't make its way to the floor. I think, though, what you'll see, especially tonight, is bipartisan blame pointed at House Speaker Mike Johnson. It's really striking to see him come before the cameras as the vote was happening. And there's this interesting juxtaposition for him to telegraph this optimism that this vote or this bill would receive enough votes to pass. It required a 2/3 majority. And at the time that he said that, 30 Republicans voted against it.
Because House Republicans have been ordered to shut down the government and hurt the very working class Americans that many of them pretend to want to help. This is a moment that's not about the incoming president. It's not about millionaires and billionaires. It's about the harm that House Republicans will do to the American people if the government shuts down. Families will be hurt. Farmers will be hurt. Everyday Americans whose lives were turned upside down by extreme weather events like hurricanes and floods and wildfires will be hurt if they don't get the relief that they need and deserve to improve their quality of life. If the government shuts down, holiday travel will be impacted. The ability of everyday Americans to visit their family, their friends, their loved ones will be impacted. Border security and Border Patrol agents will not be paid. TSA agents will not be paid. Small businesses will be hurt in every single community in this country. This reckless Republican-driven shutdown can be avoided if House Republicans will simply do what is right for the American people and stick with the bipartisan agreement that they themselves negotiated.